Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
The Israeli ship started to shoot before and when the helicopter was above the ships, they started to shoot.
Haneen Zouabi, an Israeli Arab member of the Knesset. She was on the lead ship of the Gaza Aid Flotilla when armed Israeli commandos stormed the ship and killed at least 9 people. She'll join us today from Jerusalem. We'll also question Israel's deputy ambassador to the United Nations, Daniel Carmon, about the attack. Then Attorney General Eric Holder says he's opening a criminal investigation into BP. The White House says it will no longer hold joint news conferences with the oil giant, and oil hits Alabama and Mississippi. We go to southern Louisiana, where the fishing industry is being devastated.
Got fishermen getting sick on a boat in the middle of the oil. What's the difference of being on an island in the middle of surrounded by oil or being on a boat out there? You understand? So we're going to have to leave. You won't be able to stand the smell. And no telling what, how long before you're dead.
All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Survivors aboard the flotilla carrying humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip have begun to provide their accounts of the Israeli assault that left at least 9 people dead and sparked an international uproar. Israel's begun deporting the 682 people seized from the ships. Many have challenged Israeli military claims that soldiers acted in self-defense after rappelling onto the Mavi Marmara. Some say Israeli troops opened fire before boarding the vessel. Passengers on other ships in the flotilla say they were threatened at gunpoint. Despite the assault, another aid ship has set sail for Gaza, intending to challenge the Israeli blockade. The ship is named after Rachel Corrie, the American who was crushed to death by an Israeli military bulldozer in March of 2003, protecting the home of a Palestinian family. The European campaign to end the siege on Gaza, meanwhile, has announced it's planning a flotilla of even more ships to set sail for Gaza in the coming weeks. The Obama administration continues to refuse issuing a condemnation of the Israeli assault. On Tuesday, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton outlined the U.S. stance in Washington.
The United States supports the Security Council's condemnation of the acts leading to this tragedy, and we urge Israel to permit full consular access to the individuals involved and to allow the countries concerned to retrieve their deceased and wounded immediately. We urge all concerned countries to work together to resolve the status of those who were part of this incident as soon as possible. We support, in the strongest terms, the Security Council's call for a prompt, impartial, credible, and transparent investigation. We support an Israeli investigation that meets those criteria.
All the permanent members of the Security Council, except for the United States, have called for Israel's 3-year blockade of the Gaza Strip to be lifted. On a visit to Uganda, United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon renewed his demand for an end to the blockade.
Had Israeli government heeded to international calls and my own strong and urgent and persistent call to lift the blockade of Gaza, this would not have happened. Therefore, it is, again, very important and urgently required that Israelis would immediately lift this blockade of Gaza.
Global protest, meanwhile, continues to grow in the aftermath of the assault. Tens of thousands of people turned out in rallies across the world. Tuesday, from South Africa to Greece to Lebanon to England to cities across the United States. Here in New York, a large crowd marched on the Israeli consulate.
I think it's anybody, a person of conscience, should be here today to stand in solidarity with the Gaza boats, with the aid boats, with the people of Gaza. As an American citizen, my tax dollars are going to fund every single Israeli bullet, every Apache helicopter, Hellfire missile, cluster bomb, white phosphorus, and I think we need to stand up. It's important to educate, but it's also important to take action. And being in the streets or engaging in boycott, divestment, and sanctions, we need to be engaging the community, we need to be part of the grassroots, and we need to be moving things forward and standing in solidarity with Palestinian society.
Meanwhile, in the West Bank, an American college student has lost her left eye after being shot in the face by an Israeli tear canister during a protest against the flotilla assault. The student, 21-year-old Emily Hanachowicz, underwent surgery in a Jerusalem hospital on Tuesday. The Israeli peace activist Jonathan Pollack witnessed the attack.
It was a spontaneous and quite small demonstration against the atrocious violence on that ship coming to Gaza. 100 people at its largest at the beginning, and with the time Emily was shot, there were about, 20 people at most there. Emily was standing aside from where things were happening, and at some point the border police officers just started shooting indiscriminately, shooting directly at us, tear gas projectiles. One from a very small distance of about 10 to 20 meters. Emily was hit in the face by one of those, and it was intentionally aimed towards us. There could have been no mistake, the small distance and the place where she was standing at.
The student was an art student at Cooper Union in New York. We'll have more on the assault on the flotilla after headlines. The Justice Department has confirmed it's opened a criminal and civil investigation into the BP oil spill in the Gulf Coast, now believed to be the worst environmental disaster in U.S. history. Eric Holder made the announcement following a meeting with federal and state prosecutors in New Orleans.
Yes, we have begun both a criminal as well as a civil investigation, as is our obligation under the law. Our environmental laws are very clear, and we have a responsibility to enforce them, and we will do so. I don't want to describe exactly who is under investigation. At this point, the investigation is and has been ongoing for some time, but I wouldn't want to specify at this point who the targets or the subjects are of that investigation.
News of the investigation helped plunge BP's stock value 15% on Tuesday. BP also announced it's effectively abandoned any hope of plugging the breached well, and instead will try to siphon off the leak until relief wells are completed in August. Earlier in the day, President Obama promised a thorough probe after meeting with the chairs of the bipartisan commission investigating the oil spill.
Untold damage is being done to the environment. Damage that could last for decades. We owe all those who've been harmed, as well as future generations, a full and vigorous accounting of the events that led to what has now become the worst oil spill in U.S. history. Only then can we be assured that deep-water drilling can take place safely.
Florida, meanwhile, set to become the fourth state directly impacted by the oil spill. State officials say an oil sheen is now just 9 miles from Pensacola and could make landfall as early as today. We'll have more on the oil spill later in the broadcast. In Japan, Prime Minister Yukio Hatayama has resigned over his broken promise to move a U.S. military base off the island of Okinawa. Hatayama sparked outrage last month when he decided to relocate the base to the north side of the island as originally agreed upon with the United States. Local residents opposed the move, which came just weeks after some 90,000 people held a rally for the base's removal. Half the estimated 47,000 U.S. troops in Japan are stationed on Okinawa. An American lawyer has been imprisoned in Rwanda shortly after arriving to defend a presidential hopeful challenging the Rwandan government. The lawyer, Peter Erlander, is being held on charges of denying the Rwandan genocide. The Rwandan government has been accused of using laws barring genocide denial to silence opposition critics. Erlander was reportedly hospitalized this week after hours of interrogation. In San Diego, a Mexican immigrant has died after customs officers repeatedly struck him with batons and shocked him with a stun gun as they deported him to Mexico. The victim, Anastasia Hernandez Rojas, has been detained after crossing over from Mexico last week. Family members say Hernandez Rojas had lived in the U.S. since he was 14 and was the father of 5 U.S.-born children. Customs officials say officers struck and tasered him after he began resisting his deportation. Witnesses reported seeing the officers kick and beat Hernandez Rojas. The San Diego Police Department says it's investigating. Here in New York, a group of immigrant youths have begun a hunger strike outside the offices of Democratic Senator and Senate Immigration Subcommittee Chair Charles Schumer in support of the DREAM Act, which would grant the children of undocumented immigrants a path to legal status. The students want Schumer to propose